This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to the Voice for Fitness Professionals podcast, where I share programming, marketing, and promotion strategies that are easy, enjoyable, even fun, so you can create a business and a life you love. And we are back for the book review. And this episode, we're really exploring something a little controversial. 9 Lies About Work. That, in fact, is the book. But first, let me introduce or reintroduce, if you've been following us, the reviewer. My guest or co-host is Tom Durkin, owner, operator of Ames Fitness and Fitness World Ankeny in the Midwest. He's the CEO of Health and Fitness Management and has 40 years experience in fitness industry sales and management, but he is not a silent partner, but somebody who is in buildings, multiple buildings every day, running the meetings, responding to phone calls, emails for 315 employees and thousands of customers. And those numbers have probably changed and increased since last I said them. He, like so many other people who have successful track records in business, is a voracious reader, and he has a personal library of over 2,000 books. He will probably tell you the exact count if we let him. So we're not going to let him, but Tom, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's dive into this one. Just to state it again, for those of you listening, this is 9 Lies About Work by Marcus Buckingham and Ashley Goodall. There is a subtitle. I've kind of left that one off, but just so you know what you're looking for, I'll link to that in the show notes. First of all, how'd you come across the book?
The title. Yeah, the title got me. 9 Lies About Work. I thought that was really strong. You know, it was controversial. I grabbed it. If it would have said 9 myths or, 9 misconceptions or something, it probably wouldn't have, the word lies, it jumped out at me. And so I pulled it off the shelf and I started reading it and I bought it and I've read it. I enjoyed it. But it is controversial. And, they've listed these 9 lies and it's pretty interesting read.
Okay. So let's unpack that. I'm going to take a side path. I'm going to detour before we even get started on the book, but I love what you just said. And everybody listening, whether you think you are or you think you're not, you are a marketer. And so there is marketing in a book title. There is marketing in every single book title, just like there's marketing in every single, or there's marketing opportunity. Let's say that. It's either good or bad. In every title that you give a program, in every title that you give your subject line of a blog or of an email, there's an opportunity there to even get the book or the email or the blog opened so that people will read it. And controversy wins if you are just posting another 5 ways to get fit. There's not too much controversy about that. You can add to it and say 5 ways to get fit after 50, but there's probably 24 other posts very similar to that, but 9 Lies About Work. Now that makes you raise your eyebrows, whether you are already starting to read it thinking I disagree or I agree with that, or, what is it going to be? It gets you to read it. And that's the first job any of us has. So I love that. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
The goal of who's the author? Marcus Buckingham and Ashley Goodall, is to sell the book. And if it would have said something weaker, I wouldn't have pulled it off the shelf. I would have walked right. I mean, I go to the bookstore every Sunday and I look at these titles and I pull books and I read reviews and got a whole little system here. If the title was not that strong, this book stays on the shelf and we're not talking about it.
Okay, so before we even dive in, what I'd love to do is unpack the list of 9 lies. But before we even do that, overall, did you agree? Are these lies?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I don't even know if I've got an answer for that, but yes and no. These are concepts that 99% of all companies use and run their company by. What these authors are saying is that the business model is changing dramatically, and that if management or if you're in a leadership role, you need to be as agile and change as fast. And they're not. And so there's a disconnect, and I know this for sure. There's a disconnect between the front lines of actually who's doing the work and the guy sitting in the office making the decisions. And what they're saying is the 9 lies that we could cover. It's that disconnect and how you can build a better team and have better communication to get a better product. And don't get stuck up in this is the method. This is the way it's been this way for years. I've been, and that's what they're saying. It's changed. And being the oldest guy in my buildings and being at the top of the food chain, I am a long ways away from the front line. And so there's one in here that says line number 2 is the best plan wins. Well, that's the first one I flipped to because I do a lot of planning. I do a lot of forecasting. And I started reading that. And I was embarrassed reading it and thinking, man, he's talking about me. And so there is really good information there. And so I would recommend that your listeners read this book. And several of these chapters I had to read twice.
Okay, so there you go, listeners. If you're wanting the Reader's Digest condensed version, you just got it. We do recommend this book, but let's do this. I'm going to read those 9 lies you forwarded to me because admittedly to listeners, sometimes I have not read the book. This is one of those times. And yet sometimes that will make me a better interviewer. I'll have better questions because I'm not doing any assuming that somebody knows or has also read it because I have not. So, number 1, people care which company they work for. Lie number 2, the best plan wins. Lie number 3, the best companies cascade goals. Lie number 4, the best people are well-rounded. Lie number 5, people need feedback. Lie number 6, people can reliably rate other people. Number 7, people have potential. Number 8, work-life balance matters most. And lie number 9, leadership is a thing. Now, for listeners, we decided we were going to handle this in that delving into 9 lies was going to take a lot longer than we want to spend and that you have to listen. So we were going to narrow it down to 3 that we were really going to talk about. I sent you my 3. You said, okay, fine. You know your listeners better than me. But then you waffled on me and said, what about this? So the 3 that I picked that I thought were really important, let's tick those off. Do you want to list those?
Well, here's what I think you sent me. I think you sent me line number 1, people care which company they work for. I think you sent me line number 2, the best plan wins. And I think you sent me line number 8, work-life balance matters most. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah.
And you thought, what about?
I'm sorry?
And you thought maybe we needed to re-examine?
We can use them. I'm just saying, I think number 8 gives me the most difficulty. It has given me the most difficulty over the last 40 years. This work-life balance matters most. And so I don't care where we start.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's like we did mindset last week, right?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it goes back to that, where your mindset is at, what you expect out of this life, what you're willing to put into it. I mean, but we'll start wherever you want.
Yeah, I'd like to start with number 8, that work-life balance matters most, because I think a lot of us come out thinking, well, I need to do this, or, I've got an instance of working very recently with a coaching client who said, here's what I want. Here's the transformation that I want and how I would like my business to change for having worked with you. And it was, this is where I want to be on track for making X amount of revenue, in this coming year. Whether or not she reached that goal by the end of 12 months or she was on track for doing it, because she had some ramping up to do. And I came back and I said, right now you're at a third of this. So we've got to take this, and here's the steps that I'd like to see you take in areas where you can choose what activities you do in order to reach this goal. But literally, the revenue has to be here. So we've got to put the action steps in place. And a week later, she came back and said, I don't want to do that. My family's too important to me. And to her, it was like, if she did that, she could not also, have a role in her family, or that, it may have been an obstacle she was putting up there. But I think we think it's got to be either or, I've got to tone it back so I have balance. So talk to me about what you experienced.
Well, you know, this is a touchy subject for me because I've heard this my whole life. And, so here's the message: work is bad, life is good. Work empties you out, life fills you up. That's kind of the message. And they're saying, I've got to have this balance. Well, what does that balance mean? So that means, I want to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I want to make X amount of dollars. I want to be a successful career. I want to continue to grow. And I want to spend the rest of the time doing what I want to do with my family, whomever. That's not going to happen. And getting that concept understood to people is difficult. And so, in here, they talk about if there's something that you love, whatever that is, that it's really easy to go over the time limit allocated for what you're supposed to do. So you and I were talking yesterday, I think, and we talked about painting. So if someone loves to paint and they go into their art studio and they start painting and they think, well, I'm gonna do this for 1 hour, and all of a sudden they look up and 3 hours have went by. Or for me, it's reading. I'll think, well, I'm going to read for 45 minutes. And all of a sudden I'll really get into this book and I'll be there 2 hours. And I'll think, oh my God, where did that time go? Okay, I am balanced right there. When I'm doing that, I'm happy, I'm productive, I'm in an elevated state, I'm more creative, I'm engaged in life. That's where I want to be. That's what I want to be doing. I don't want to be doing anything else. It makes me, it fulfills me. And what they're saying in here is people put too much emphasis on the balance part. It's not a scale. It's not, and so they're saying if you're going to be successful, that you have to understand that, you may spend more time at your job. But if you love your job and love what you do and get fulfilled from your work, your employment, that's okay. And don't look at someone else and say, oh, they say, oh, you spend a lot of time at work, you spend a lot of time on your career, you spend a lot of time on your craft. They're saying if you enjoy what you're doing, that the work balance is not as, it's not a 50-50 proposition.
Yeah, love that. And I think, anybody listening who might be thinking, well, I don't have any balance, I'm working all the time. It may be that the work you're doing is not the exact role. There may be a different role in the fitness industry, or maybe it's outside the fitness industry that actually you're better suited for. And that will stimulate you more, even though you may not be working any less, to have more satisfaction.
Right. It elevates you to a new plane. It elevates you. It should lift you. And so then you're more productive. You're more creative. You're more resilient. And that's where you need to be. So I've been in fitness my whole life because I believed in it. And so there's been a lot of obstacles. There's been a lot of challenges. But I've enjoyed it. And at the end of the day, I believed in what I was doing. And so I never thought when I was talking to some customer about trying to get them fit or talking to a personal trainer or about whatever, I enjoyed what I was doing because I believed in what I was doing and I loved what I was doing. And time did fly by. Years flew by. But I never worried about the work-life balance. I felt good about what I was doing. And so I think I struggle with this chapter because I struggle with a lot of younger people coming into the fitness industry just like you and they're talking about this. Well, how can I balance all these things? Well, like you're saying, maybe this is not a good fit for you because if you love something, when you're in love with someone, you say, "Oh, I spent 16 minutes with you. I only have 20, and I only have 4 minutes left." Or does time fly by? Time flies by. You get lost up in things. You forget about it. Well, that's what they're saying. That's what you need to be looking for in your career.
So good. All right. So have we covered that one? You think we can move on?
I think you'd like to, yes.
You're so intuitive. All right. Let's go back to the one that you talked about hitting home. The best plan wins.
Yeah.
I think we could take this from square one. We could take this from, I think, the romance that any college student might have had. For you go to college, you apply for a job, you get the job, you live happily ever after.
Yeah. Well, so the best plan wins. I'm guilty of also. I mean, so here's how this works. So every year, I sit down and come up with a battle plan for all departments, whether it's revenue, expense, capital improvements, which is remodeling, construction, acquisition of new buildings, whatever it is, and we plan this out. And I plan the whole year. So I plan my December revenue the year before. We plan the advertising campaign. We plan everything out. The problem with that is a couple things. One, I am really removed from the front lines. I do not see customers on a regular basis. I see a handful of employees on a regular basis, on a daily basis. I go through the buildings on a daily basis. I have meetings on a daily basis, but I don't necessarily work at the front desk and hear and talk to our customers. I don't personal train anyone. I don't teach any classes, but yet I'm making the plans based on what I think should happen or I want to happen. So the two things wrong they're saying with the way I'm doing it is that it's not fluid enough. So for instance, you set up the best plan wins, you set up your pro forma for the whole year and something changes throughout the year that you've got have enough agility to be able to change that plan. And the second thing is I should be getting more input and more feedback from the guys that are administrating on the front lines to get them to sign off on the plan to say, yeah, this is realistic. So what happens is if we don't hit quota, if we don't hit our pro forma number, I'm disappointed and I want to know why. Well, the plan was probably failed from day one. When I ruled it out, it was probably a wrong plan. And so when they're saying the best plan wins is a lie, what they're saying is the best teamwork, the best team coming together with an agenda that everyone gets to participate in, that's what really wins. So it's not one guy, me, writing out the plan. It's the whole team buying into it and having collaboration on it and having buy-in.
Got it. That makes so much sense. And yet I would have to argue that in some cases, even in the one that you just mentioned, that you doing that baseline homework is really important. It's just that you've got to call other people in because having something on paper, having some kind of a plan for what you're talking about really in terms of numbers. Of course, I mean, that's bottom line of the business, but then there's also, so if you went over to the marketing department, ideally, whether it's you do 12 months at a time or I can tolerate about 6 months. I'm trying to get there where I've got all my content planned. Like I know the blogs, I know the podcasts that are going to happen between now and the end of the year. And then you're either working on them or they're done too. And, having that and knowing it and knowing how that's related to because this program is launching, then this post makes sense because it's actually teasing the content that makes someone interested in taking a step forward. I mean, all of that planned out is valuable. But again, then there may be a new research study released that I need to talk about and tie in, or something relevant in the news, whether it's related to health and fitness or not. If it's affecting all of us, it should be then pulled in. So it's the plan with flexibility is also important. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think from my standpoint, not only the flexibility, but my flexibility in willing to change it. I need more feedback from the team,
Mm-hmm.
and I need buy-in. I
Right.
need, I mean, if they all sign off, I mean, I don't know. Let's say there's I don't know, 55 personal trainers, for instance. If as a group they know this is the goal, this is what we're shooting for, this is what we're looking for, and they all say this is attainable, and we all come together and sign off on it, and that we understand that things could come up. I mean, there's going to be obstacles. Just because you plan something in January, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in October? And you've got to be willing to shift gears. People are going to quit. Things are going to happen. And you got to be able to shift gears and have the speed and, like you're saying, the agility to get that done. Then that's the best plan. That plan wins.
Great. Okay. So I really want to unpack we're kind of working our way backwards here, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But line number one was people care which company they work for. And I have some thoughts about what might have gone on in this one, but I'm really curious. So tell me, I mean, what's the premise of this lie?
Okay. The premise of the lie is the name of the company or the perks.
Hmm.
They think, so you get to bring your dog to work, or you get an hour and a half per lunch, or you get Fridays you wear blue jeans, or I'm just making this up. I have no clue. That they're saying the perks. People think that the perks are what matters, and if the perks matter to you, you're in the wrong company. And if you own that company and the perks are the other thing that are keeping your employees, you're probably not doing a very good job. So, what they use an example in here. This lady worked for Company A for 17 years, and she switched to Company B. And the reason she switched to Company B, she thought Company B was going to be a better fit for her. She was going to have more upward mobility and so forth. She went to Company B, and she was there 2 weeks. She did 7 interviews with Company B. She was there several weeks, and she wrote down the last day she was going to be there. She was 90 days. She went through 7 interviews, lasted 90 days. Went back to Company A. And here's what she said. She said they had a lot of nice perks, but I did not feel valued. I was not heard. She said the manager said one thing in the meeting, did something else when they walked out the door. I did not feel supportive. Bad news travels fast. Good news does not travel. I would work hard on a project. I would not get credit for it. I felt devalued. I would much rather give up the blue jeans on Friday and feel value in my company and be heard and be an important clog in the wheel, if you will, in my company than having perks. So what they're saying to you is that, and I think that's right. I mean, I believe that. And so it matters a great deal on how they feel. I mean, you don't care if there's solar panels in the cafeteria. You want to know what really happens. I mean, your world is, 2 feet. So what happens in those 2 feet when a decision needs to get made? And you shake hands with your manager or your owner, whoever, and if you've got a deal, is that thing going to follow through? Is he or she going to talk behind your back? Is she going to support you? And that's what people are looking for. It's not necessarily all the outside perks that maybe some companies can provide, which are great. Now, if you can do both, that would be wonderful. So, I don't know if you call it culture. I don't know if that's the label that you stick to it, but it's just how you feel on the ground level that, when you're working hard It's what people really truly care about. The ground level stuff is what you truly care about. You don't give a crap if you can wear blue jeans on Friday if you feel like you're not heard in meetings, or you're not supported, or the manager lies to you or doesn't support you. Who cares if you can wear blue jeans? It's the nuts and bolts of this thing. If you're going to work hard and you want to love your job, you got to love the people you work with and believe in them. And that's what this chapter is about.
Yeah, I love that. So I think it comes back to, too, you said culture, but people care about people that care, right? So
Mm-hmm.
people that care about them within the company, or, like a customer doesn't necessarily want to do business with a company. They don't necessarily have as much brand loyalty today as they have people loyalty. People want to work with people, and people want to work for people who believe in the same things they do.
Well,
Did it? Whoop, go
especially,
ahead.
especially in fitness, especially in fitness.
Yeah.
In 40 years, out of the thousands and thousands of people we've talked to and memberships we sold in personal training, no one has ever said, "Oh, great treadmill, great."
Yeah.
They don't care. No one talks about that. They talk about the trainer. They talk about the encounter. They talk about the thank you card. They talk about the intangibles on how they make you feel. They don't know the difference. Most of the people that I deal with don't know the difference between treadmill A or treadmill B. They don't know a Bosu ball from a TRX, and they don't really need to. That's not their job. But how do you make them feel? And that's the same thing with these employees, the people that you come in contact with. So if you're going out there and you're going to build a company, you're going to start something. I mean, start with a strong foundation. Last week or this week we talked about mindset. I mean, that's critical. That is critical. I mean, and so I think on mindset, Deborah, I think we talked about fixed mindset or growth mindset. Well, some of these books that I read, doing this business for 40 years, I'm thinking, holy cow, I got to make a lot of changes. I have to have that growth mindset as I'm reading these books. And so I think, we recommended mindset to your listeners. And I would recommend this book to your listeners. And I think there's really good, solid advice in here. And so if you're just getting started, or you're going out to apply for a job, let's say you're going out to apply for a job, this would be good information for you to take a look at when you're trying to make that decision.
Great. Okay. So there you have it. That's the recommendation in the bottom line. 9 Lies About Work by Marcus Buckingham and Ashley Goodall. I will link to that in the show notes. And if you missed, we've referred to Mindset, the book by Carol S. Dweck. We've referred to the review we did on that several times today. So if you missed that one, that's a definitive must read as well. And I'll link to that and past book reviews as well. And coming up next, among those things we've talked about, the obesity code. We'll review that. And in that one, we kind of sway back in the other direction, really the basis and the foundation for what are we doing in the fitness industry that we seem to be missing the mark in making a dent in what's causing obesity and what can help solve the problem of obesity. Tom, thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, if you have a question, leave it below the show link at fitnessmarketingmastery.com/lies about work. And there are dashes between each of those words. And I would so appreciate it if you leave us a rating in iTunes. It really helps us spread the word. Check out the blog and other podcast episodes at fitnessmarketingmastery.com.